I want to talk to the Antifa movement. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up. They're coming for you. Some of us have seen this movie before. When I was in SDS in the 60s, whenever we'd have public meetings, I remember one in particular really stuck in my head. It was outside the Student Union building. This would have been around 1967 or 68. And Brad Lang, as I recall, was one of the leaders of SDS at the time at MSU, and he was giving a talk about social justice and ending the war and all that kind of stuff. And this one guy kept yelling, hey, we got to burn down the ROTC, burn down the ROTC building, kill the pigs. This is this guy's refrain. I still remember him. And later, after, years later, some of the folks who'd been involved in SDS sued the local police and the state police to get their personal files, and discovered that that guy who was yelling "burn down the ROTC building" was either a police officer or an informant. I'm sorry, I don't remember which, but it was one or the other. In my dad's generation, it was a guy named Marinus van der Lubbe. You familiar with this name? This is, I'm telling you, a year or two, or at the most 3 from now, we will be sitting and talking and looking back on this moment, and you'll be saying, holy cow, that guy really did play the role of Marinus van der Lubbe. Marinus van der Lubbe was depending on who you ask, a mentally retarded or schizophrenic or paranoid or something, young Dutch man who called himself a communist. And whether or not Hitler's people facilitated this is still something that's being debated by historians, but it appears the German Parliament building, much like the U.S. Capitol building, had tunnels going out from underneath it. And one of them went to an office building in which one of Hitler's right-hand men basically, had an office. And the story goes that van der Lubbe was taken from that office, this guy's office, down into the basement, through the little tunnel to the Parliament building, up into the Parliament building, and the Parliament building was decorated with all these long, what do they call yeah, tapestries, thank you. These, elegantly done, many of them from like the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries. And he set them on fire. And pretty soon the whole Parliament building was on fire. And Hitler had just recently been appointed chancellor. And so he rushes over. He was having dinner with von Papen at the time, or maybe it was Hindenburg. And he runs over to the building and calls a press conference. The press meets him there. It was all radio back then. And, Hitler was being attacked at that point by the left. They said he was a simpleton, that the entire press, that he didn't know how to speak well. He had this weird kind of Southern accent. It was actually Austrian, mingled with, Munich beer hall accent, which he got rid of, by the way. He took lessons in public speaking. But they said that, he's just a dumb guy. He desperately wanted to be appreciated and loved by the old money crowd, but he also knew deep down inside that they hated him, that they'd never accept him. But he knew that this terrorist was going to strike. He was ready for this. And he knew that it was going to solve his problem. So when he heard that the Parliament building was on fire, he rushed over there and said, and I quote, "You are now witnessing the beginning of a great epoch in history. This fire is a sign from God that we must declare an all-out war on terrorism." This is what Hitler said, standing in front of the Parliament building. And the terrorists he identified, that communist who set this building on fire. Instantly, well, within 2 weeks, the first detention center for communists, for terrorists, was built in Oranienburg to hold the first suspected allies of Marinus van der Lubbe. So, you know, this whole thing, the police could now intercept mail, they could wiretap phones, suspected terrorists could be imprisoned without specific charges and without access to their lawyers. Police could execute sneak and peeks. They could come into your home without a warrant, or would not tell you that they had the warrant, or not tell you that they were in their home, in your home. He passed, it was called the Patriotic Decree on the Protection of People and State. It was the German version of the Patriot Act. And citizens who protested the leader in public, and there were many, quickly found themselves confronting the newly empowered police's batons, gas, and jail cells, fenced off in protest zones. In the meantime, he was constantly talking up the threat of these other people among the German people, while armed gangs terrorized minorities and smashed windows in Jewish-owned businesses. He brought a formerly obscure word into common usage. He started in 1934. Rudolf Hess used the word when he introduced Hitler at the 1934 Nuremberg rally, which was made into the 1935 movie Triumph of Will by Leni Riefenstahl. The word was Heimat. It means homeland. And what does that say? Well, it says that Germany is a biological. You're German by virtue of your DNA. You know, it's a biological heritage, a destiny. It is your homeland. It's not just our country. Blut und Erd. I was always saying Blut und Erd. Somebody, Blut und Boden. Sue corrected me last week. Thank you for that, Sue. Blut und Boden. You know, blood and soil, blood and dirt. And so anyhow, it just goes on and on. I mean, the parallels between 1934 Germany and today are pretty shocking. And I'm telling you, I am just waiting. Somewhere out there is a Marinus van der Lubbe. Whether he is an Antifa person who is like, you know, a true believer and firmly committed and knows that he's doing the right thing, or whether he's some right-winger who's going to try and pull a variation on these outed videos that James O'Keefe is promoting constantly, where he heavily edits videos to make one thing look like another thing. Whichever it's going to be, I predict it's going to be, and it's going to seriously blemish Antifa. So that's my prediction for what's coming up.